This is an awkward item that no one really thinks about, and it's not on anyone's mind because there's really not much of a niche at all to build it. And that item is Silverbranch Bow. Recently, Yamahi asked me on Twitter if I could do a video on Silverbranch Bow, and initially I was like, what's the point of that? Why would we talk about an item that really doesn't seem to have a purpose at all? But he pointed out that I could look at it in the context of Erlang Shen, who can stack it quicker than anyone else. That I thought was a rather interesting idea, so I figured I'd look into it and look into the DPS values in that context as well. So if you're like me and you haven't actually used Silverbranch Bow in ages, here's a quick refresher on what the item does and what it is. It's an item in the short bow tree, the same tree that's shared with Ekyvel, Atalanta's Bow and Odysseus Bow. The item itself provides you with 25% attack speed and 10 physical penetration for 1700 gold, so much like Ekyvel. But on top of that, it also has a passive, and this passive is a little bit different. Every successful basic attack increases your attack speed by 5%. Stacks last for 3 seconds and stack up to 6 times. A few key things to keep in mind already. This item does not come with any power and needs 6 hits for full stacks, which is very unusual. Most items need 3 to 4 hits. And it also doesn't steal anything from the enemy, unlike Ekyvel, so it's just an amplification for yourself. The absolute maxed out attack speed is 55%. So why is this item generally not worth talking about? Because in terms of early trading potential for a cheap price, Ekyvel just seems to be the better choice in pretty much any context, as it steals power, which also helps your ability damage, and again it steals from the enemy, which makes the enemy weaker as well, and attack speed just doesn't do that much overall DPS wise for you in those stages where you would buy an item like that. On the other hand, if you're looking for attack speed specifically, then there is Odysseus Bow, which is not drastically more expensive, also has a bridge item in between, so it's not bad in that regard either. You have Charged Bow for 1200 gold, and Odysseus Bow with its 40% attack speed right off the bat, plus the Chain Lightning, which will add a lot of extra damage through the basic attack power, will pretty much always outshine it in later stages of the game. The DPS here is simply way better through the lightning. It's not that easy to calculate because depending on the bounces, the value will go up or down. But overall, it's very clear that Odysseus Bow is geared as the late game attack speed choice if you're looking for raw attack speed. So it should be clear by now that Silverbranch is a niche case, but what if there is a niche where this item can actually work, where it fits in? That's what we're trying to find out by putting it on Erlang Shen, who will always get 2 stacks from any on-hit items, so he will get 2 stacks on Ekyvel and stack Ekyvel fully in 2 hits, and he will get 2 sticks from Silverbranch Bow and stack it fully in 3 hits. For comparison's sake, I made some tables here where I tested the different stack values in terms of DPS to see what comes out of it. So we have a level 10 Erlang Shen with Assassin's Blessing, because this is something you would typically run in the jungle and not in the solo or similar. You have a Warrior Tabi for extra base damage to work with and to get some damage off with your abilities, which is also pretty important for Erlang Shen, who still has a decent amount of ability damage. And then you have either Ekyvel or Silverbranch Bow. Now, what we have here is the stacks. Depending on the stacks, we will have a different DPS value, obviously, and it's always going up by how many stacks Erlang Shen would get per hit. So Silverbranch goes up to 2, 4, and 6 stacks respectively and leaves out the ones in between. Then we have the attack speed values, the total in-hand damage between the power and the basic base damage, and we have the penetration. Now, the penetration for both items is 10, so that part is relatively easy. I will have to point out here before we get started that there seems to be some weird glitch with Ekyvel. I'm not sure if it's just on Erlang Shen or if it's a general thing, but for some reason he gets 11 basic attack damage instead of 10. Not sure what's causing this or if it's possibly a glitch, but even if it's not, it is a very minor difference of 3 in-hand damage at max rank, so it's not gonna have a major impact here anyways. In addition to the full stacks, I've always added a version where you have the attack speed steroid from his Mink active as well, to see if a higher attack speed value through that would have a drastic impact on the DPS in one way or another. Erlang Shen's attack speed scaling is rather straightforward, and that makes things pretty simple here. With 0 stacks in either case, his attack speed will be 1.35 because both items come with the same base attack speed. Then at 2 stacks, Silverbranch will be 1.45, at 4 stacks it will be 1.55, and at 6 stacks it will be 1.65. If we add the ReMixer on top, we are at 2.0 attack speed. With Eveline on the other hand, at 0 stacks to 3 stacks we stay at the same 1.35, but with the steroid we go up to 1.7. In terms of basic attack damage, nothing really changes between the ranks with Silverbranch, and even the steroid won't add anything here, so it's always 109. With Eveline, as said before, there's this weird glitch, so we'll start at 109 damage as well. With 2 stacks we're at 131 damage, and with 3 stacks we're at 142 damage. That remains the same with the steroid. In terms of penetration, all are the same, it's always 10 penetration. The resulting DPS values are already pretty interesting. So with Silverbranch we start at 107.4 DPS, and after 1 basic attack we have 115.4 DPS. With 2 basic attacks we have 123.3 DPS, and with 4 basic attacks we have 131.3 DPS. If we add the steroid on top of that, we get 159.1 DPS. With Eveline, we once again start at the same value for 0 stacks, but then we go up to 129 DPS after the first basic attack already. And that is almost as much as Silverbranch reaches after 4 hits. There is literally a 2 DPS difference here, something you will never even notice. And then after 3 hits, we're at 139.9 DPS, so we have an extra 8 DPS on top of what Silverbranch has after an additional basic attack. With the steroid, the difference is even bigger. We are now at 176 DPS, as with Eveline you also have more power, and it's more synergistic when you have more power to get more attack speed for higher DPS. So it beats Silverbranch across the board. From the moment your first basic attack lands, Eveline is straight up better than Silverbranch. And that's not only in terms of the DPS itself, but again you also have the power steal from the enemy on top of that, and on top of that you also have more ability damage after your first hit, because you get more power and that means every ability you have will deal more damage, which especially for a character like Erlang Shen is not unimportant. Once again, power is still important for him. But talking about power, maybe this DPS curve is just skewed in one direction because we need more power. Maybe it's just that we have too much attack speed, so the attack speed value diminishes too much, and if we had more power, then Silverbranch would be more impactful. Let's test that all, shall we? I've been a little bit lazy with the calculation here. I've not changed the level to change all the stats. We just went with level 10 again. With higher levels, both power and attack speed would go up, so it wouldn't really change much either. So we can kind of juggle with the same values. Again, we have the same kind of stats that we're going through, and this time the basic attack damage is a base of 164 through the addition of Stone Cutting Sword. We also get more protection reduction through Stone Cutting Sword, so we will factor this in as penetration here, depending on how many stacks we have. Stone Cutting Sword, again, double stacks with Erlang Shen, so we get the full stacks within 2 hits. With the Eveline, again, the power goes higher and we can go up to 197 here. And here you can see the resulting values are in the same concept as the last one. With Silverbranch Bow and Eveline, we start at 161.6 DPS. Silverbranch then after 1 hit goes up to 203 DPS, then to 238, then to 253 at full stacks, and if you add the steroid on top of it, it's 307. Eveline, on the other hand, already has 215 DPS after the first basic attack and 249 after the second basic attack. With that, it is slightly behind Silverbranch at max stacks, but with the first basic attacks already dealing more damage, that is something that will not be compensated for in a fight anyways. The leverage that Eveline gets over the first few basic attacks until Silverbranch has reached full stacks is something that should not be made up for in most fights, considering how many basic attacks it requires. So we have a super minor DPS difference here of 4-ish DPS, and that's about it. And if we activate the steroid, then the DPS actually goes higher for Eveline once again with 313 DPS. So in this case, it would even have an additional 6 DPS once again. That would definitely offset the DPS that you lose anyways. And that is also not factoring in once again that Eveline also steals power and gives yourself more power for abilities. Using Silverbranch Bow in the game also didn't feel very satisfying. I didn't feel like there was anything I could achieve that I couldn't achieve with Eveline. And once again, keep in mind this is on the strongest character for this particular item because he can stack it way quicker than anyone else. Everyone else would have an even weaker power curve with this item due to the longer stacking time, and that would make it really weak, as if it wasn't already weak enough. Now, if you want to try the most niche of niche cases, then you could theoretically see how Concise performs with this item in comparison, because Concise obviously benefits from that extra attack speed that it has, and I would expect at some point you would actually be able to squeeze out a result where the DPS would get higher if you have Concise and Silverbranch. But I don't think that's worth it. If you're considering to go into a Concise build with Erlang Shen, which is questionable in most situations in the first place, then I would say you should rather look towards attack speed boots and a Kaival than hindering your entire early power curve through Silverbranch Bow. Otherwise, for the entire early game, until the moment you've finished both Silverbranch Bow and Concise, you will be weaker than you could be otherwise with a similarly designed item with the same price tag. And otherwise, you could also consider Odysseus Bow here once again, which I think should give you better results in most situations. So, as my verdict, Silverbranch Bow is still not worth it, and this experiment for Erlang Shen, who could have been somebody who could have made some use of it, also failed. And with that, thank you guys very much for watching. I hope this was interesting, insightful, and if you're new to the channel, feel free to sub and ring the bell, it really helps me out. Other than that, see you for the next one tomorrow. DukeSloth, out.